The Reserve Bank of New Zealand has left the country's cash rate on hold. Let's take you live to our New Zealand correspondent, Jack Nyhoff, who's in Wellington. Jack, it comes some pretty tough economic conditions there.
Yeah, CPI inflation, that's sitting around 4.7% at the moment, and that's what the Reserve Bank is trying to get down to between 1% and 3%. So it's still too high, and that number's not budging enough. So for the sixth consecutive time, they've decided to leave the cash rate on hold at 5.5%. Now, the country is in a double-dip recession at the moment, so very tough economic conditions that they're dealing with. And of course, this is ahead of the budget at the end of May, which will also give tax cuts to New Zealanders. So that's another consideration by the Reserve Bank here, whether those tax cuts could drive up inflation. So very trying times economically for many industries here in New Zealand, Ash.
Yeah, and one of them is the television media industry. It's facing a collapse in New Zealand.
Yeah, free-to-air news here in New Zealand is looking down the barrel of a possible collapse. Today was really D-Day for two networks, state-owned media, RBNZ, as well as Warner Brothers Discovery-owned News Hub. So the news, after a 6 weeks consultation at News Hub, is that the entire newsroom that Warner Brothers Discovery operates here will close down. So there's only really two television networks to watch come 6 o'clock news, and this is one of them, which will leave just one news network, one television network with news. That's RBNZ. So here's what one of the executives at Warner Brothers Discovery said today while making this announcement. He says in 2023 alone, 74 million disappeared from broadcast TV advertising in New Zealand. He says apart from the global financial crisis, this was the single largest year-on-year drop in 30 years, a 14.3% drop. So we talk about those tough economic conditions. This really paints a picture of what media companies are facing here in New Zealand. So at News Hub, 300 jobs to go. So that's all their programming, their breakfast shows, current affairs shows, nightly 6 o'clock news. Over at state-run RBNZ, state-owned rather, RBNZ, they've announced that their midday news is being cut, their late news is being cut, current affairs show Fair Go is being cut, as well as their Sunday night current affairs show. So pretty much annexing all the current affairs and just leaving the 6 o'clock news. They're facing similar cost pressures. They're different from our ABC, which is 100% taxpayer funded. They have advertising revenue, so they do need to turn a profit for the government. It just leaves one other network which produces free-to-air television news at 5:30 for the general audience. Now that's Sky New Zealand, similar logo to us, but completely different company. They produce a 5:30 bulletin that currently is produced by News Hub. That's closing down. So come July, questions remain. What will happen to that one? A statement from that company that we've got today says our thoughts are with everyone at Warner Brothers Discovery during this tough time. They say that they have agreement for News Hub to produce their news first at 5:30 on Sky Open. They, now that those changes have been confirmed, they're taking their time to consider the options. This is on the back of leaders of both sides of politics here saying it's really alarming for media diversity. The opposition leader, Chris Hipkins, really cutting into the government for their lack of action, saying that these outlets are vital to democracy. On the other side of the field, the Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon, an ex-CEO and ex-executive, said that the government's role isn't to dish out support for media companies, but to help them adapt to be sustainable businesses with the changing times. So a lot going on here over the ditch, Ash.
Yeah, tough times for journalism. Thanks, Jack.